Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle and this is a reading roundup. In my reading roundup videos, I like to just talk about the books that I've been reading recently. So let's just get into it. I have 8 books that I want to talk about here. And I've already done a video of 2 because I had to take them back to the library. So I'm going to slip that video in right now. Hi. So I have 2 books here that I want to tell you about because I need to take them back to the library. They are shamefully overdue. I don't even want to tell you how overdue they are. But I had meant to do this a couple days ago, but then we had this like crazy blizzard. So first, earlier in the day, there was this rain that turned into freezing rain, so everything was ice. And then the blizzard hit. And the wind was unbelievable. We had gusts of like 126 kilometers an hour here in the city. And it was just crazy. Like we were lying in bed wondering if like, you know, the windows were gonna break. It was crazy. And the next morning we got up to see kind of the results and there was snow blown everywhere, huge drifts. And the wind had been so strong that it had picked up one of our wooden Adirondack chairs on the deck out back. And these are heavy chairs. And it picked it up off the deck and like it was across the yard by the fence, flipped upside down. Like it was crazy. So anyway, the roads were dangerous. There had been power outages, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, but I can go out this afternoon. I think things have calmed down enough. So I need to tell you about these 2 books. So I read the 3rd in the County Guide series by Ian Sansom. This is Westmoreland Alone. This one was a really good one in the series. I really liked it. So like I've said before with this series, they're set in 1938. They're told in the first person, and each book only has a week or 2 of time happening in between the books. They're really scrunched together. But I like that, like it makes it feel like you're really just continuing on with one long ongoing story. So the main character is Stephen Sefton, and at the beginning of this book they're about to head out to visit the county of Westmoreland, which is up in the north of England. But because of some stuff that's been happening with him in London, he needs to get out of Dodge. And so he actually decides to take a train, and Morley and Morley's daughter will take the car and meet him up there. Well, unfortunately, there is an accident with the train just as it's pulling into the station. And that part of the book was crazy, like the description of the accident and the aftermath. Yeah, that was crazy. And then the next day, they're visiting a dig, an archaeological dig, and they find a body of a woman at the dig. So things are not going well for poor Sefton in this book. But it was a really good one. We got to know the characters even more, and there was issues of prejudice that they dealt with. There was the train crash, which was so interesting, and the subsequent investigation. There was his body at the dig, and while they're there, of course, they watch some Westmoreland wrestling. And yeah, it was just a really good outing in the series, and I really enjoyed it. And then I've been reading this series for a long time. It's just kind of whenever I remember to pick up the next one in the series, I do. And so this is called Something Wicked by David Roberts. It's part of a series also set in the late 30s. It's like this one is like the 6th or 7th in the series. It's the 8th in the series. The main character is Lord Edward Corinth, who is the son of a duke, and his now fiance Verity Brown, who is a communist journalist. So that's quite a pairing for you. It's an interesting series. They're historical mysteries, but what I love about this series is the description of the events that are going on at that time. It is such an interesting time in history, and especially in England. and they get involved in murder cases, of course, but what I like is what's going on around all that stuff. So in this one, they head to Henley. Verity has tuberculosis and she needs to spend some time at like a sanatorium, and there's one near Henley, which is where Edward needs to be because he's investigating the death of his dentist, who had told him about some previous deaths that he was suspicious about. So Edward is investigating that. But I just really enjoy the historical stuff. So Verity she was a reporter and she had been in Spain, but most recently she had been in Czechoslovakia, and she had to come back because she contracted tuberculosis. And so all of that is so interesting, and like figuring out how to combine her strong belief in communism with her love for Edward, who is an aristocrat, and of course that's just like, you know, and so all of that is interesting. But then you get all of this stuff with fascism and the rise of Hitler and Mosley and the black shirts in England, and there's just so much going on that I really enjoy. So the books are like, they're generally like 3.5 to 4 stars for me. This one I gave 3.5 to. It was good. I was a little disappointed with the resolution, like who the killer was. And oftentimes Verity drives me crazy. And just because she is so single-minded in her belief in communism that nothing else matters to her, and that can make her a very selfish person who appears to not care about what's going on with other people. And so there's times when she drives me even more crazy than usual. But I mean, it makes her a really interesting character, I guess. So yeah, I'll continue on with this series. We're heading, like, you know, really briskly into the Second World War, and I think that's very interesting. And so yeah, I'm interested to see what happens next for Edward and Verity. Alright, that's it. I gotta go to the library now. See ya! Okay, next up on the list is The Holdout by Graham Moore. This one was really interesting. I don't read a ton of I don't read a ton of legal thrillers, but I enjoy them when I do, and this one was just so interesting. So the main character in this is Maya Seal, and I believe it's 10 years before the events of this book, was called to jury duty, and she ended up on the trial of this man who was accused of killing a 15-year-old girl. Now, they do not have the body. She was never found, but there was enough evidence for the police to arrest this man and to put him on trial, and she's on the jury. The events of this book take place 10 years later, when a docu-series gathers all of the jurors back to the hotel where they were sequestered to run a series of 10 years on what's happened. Now, this isn't a spoiler because it's right in the synopsis. She is the one holdout on the jury, which is why it's called The Holdout. And she manages to convince the rest of the jury to bring back a verdict of not guilty. She had enough doubts about the case that she was really not sure. Now, when they first did their vote, everybody but her voted that he was guilty, so that's impressive on its own. So 10 years later, they want to look at the jurors, what they think now, etc., etc. And it was so fascinating. It was a great thriller. It was a great mystery, because at this reunion at the hotel where they were sequestered, they ended up being sequestered for this trial for like 3 or 4 months. It was ridiculous. And at this hotel, the body of one of the jurors ends up dead in her hotel room. So there is kind of the mystery of the past. Were they right in the verdict that they gave in the past? But then the present day mystery is who killed this juror in her hotel room and why. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was really interesting. It was a good pacey thriller, but it also just brought up so many interesting aspects of the legal system, and specifically the jury system, which I just thought was really, really interesting. I made the note of a couple of things. So with the way that our jury system works, in Canada and in the States, you know, you bring these 12 people together and they are supposed to come up with a verdict. But of course, you can never get away from the personal issues in people's lives. So in this case, everybody had something going on. Every member of the jury had issues outside of the case that affected their behavior on the jury, which is totally accurate, I think. And especially in a case like this, where you have to sequester the jury and where it is for such a long time, specific issues to that situation arise that are addressed in here that are so fascinating. So that you get to the end, and by the end, some jurors bring back a verdict not because they think that that's what is the right answer and justice, but because they just want to go home already. They want it to be over. So that it was so very interesting. And then there was also stuff, interesting stuff about legal strategy and how much the truth matters in that. And there was one quote I wrote down. That's accurate, but bad legal strategy. Sometimes the truth was an especially poor defense. So I like to look at the first sentence or line in a book and kind of see how well it sets up the story or draws me in. So the first sentence of The Holdout: Maya Seal removed 2 photographs from her briefcase. She held them face in against her skirt. This thing was all going to come down to timing. So yeah, really, really good. If you like a good legal thriller, this could be the book for you. If you like a book that kind of really gets into some of the nitty-gritty of the jury system and its pros and cons, let's say, then you might enjoy this as well. And then I was in the mood for a really good, isolated, closed circle mysteries. And so I picked up Death in the Family by Tessa Weggert. And this one delivered. It was great. It was totally an isolated, closed circle mystery. It's set in the States, in the northern part of New York State, in their Thousand Lakes district or area. So right there, right on the border between Canada and the States. And the main character is Shanna Merchant. And we know right from the beginning that she is new to the area. She is recovering from being taken by a serial killer. So she was a police officer in New York City. She got taken by a serial killer and managed to escape. But of course, she's experiencing trauma from that. And so she kind of retreats to this small area, smaller town. And her and her partner, Tim, get called to a private island in this Thousand Island? Thousand Island. Like the dressing, right? Anyways, they get called out to a private island because there is a man missing, presumed dead, because of the sheer amount of blood that was found in his bed. They have to assume that he is very seriously injured, if not already dead. So a storm is already raging, but they manage to get out to the island. But once they get there, the storm makes it too difficult for the forensics team or the doctor to come out to the island. So the two of them are there alone with the family on the island. And it was totally good. It was atmospheric. It was isolated because they realize at one point that the boats are missing, so there is no way off. And then the power goes out. So I mean, it's great. And then another body shows up. So it was good. And you had the additional conflict of Maya dealing with her own issues that totally affect how she investigates this case, and how much she trusts her partner. And yeah, it was just a really good, fun ride. If you're looking for a good isolated closed circle mystery, you might want to try Death in the Family. Okay, and the first sentence in Death in the Family: it was late September, the kind of morning that turns orange when you close your eyes. Weather so sweet, everyone on the sidewalk gulps fresh air like kids drinking soda. Ooh. And then I read, this is just kind of the next up in a historical mystery series that I have been reading. It is set in the Regency time period in southern England. And this one in the series is called Death Comes to Bath by Catherine Lloyd. And this is, I don't know, the 5th or the 6th in the series, I think. It's the 6th in the series. And by this point in the book, Major Curland, he owns kind of the manor house in the town where they live, Curland St. Mary. And he is married, but he is still experiencing, he had injuries from fighting wherever he fought. And he is still kind of recuperating from some further medical issues. And so his wife suggests that they go to Bath so that he can take the waters. That's very Jane Austen. So they go to Bath and they rent a house for 3 months. And they meet the family next door is a businessman, Sir William Benson. And he is in the house next door with his second wife, his young wife, and so he has got his 3 adult children. They're all guys, they're all men, and she has 2 children from a previous marriage as well. So we've got a blended family next door. And one morning, Major Curland arrives at the baths to discover that this man is dead, in the water. And so they have to investigate. And it was just really good. I mean, there was a lot about a will that nobody can find, and a lot of questions about whether, which family members are in the will and who have been taken out. There's a lot of conflict within that family. It was great that way. Like, it's one of those, like, there's a patriarch who dies and there's questions about the will, that kind of a mystery. So that part was really interesting. I also just really enjoy the time period. I love that it's set in the Regency time period. The characters are great. So yeah, it's just a really fun historical mystery series. And Death Comes to Bath was, I think, a particularly good outing in the series. And the first sentence of Death Comes to Bath: Robert, can you hear me? Ooh, that's a good one because it draws you right in. What's happening? What's wrong with Robert? It's very action-packed right from the beginning. And The Cipher by Isabella Maldonado. Now, this one was good, but whew, it was crazy. So, FBI Special Agent Nina Guerrera is jogging in the park one morning when she gets attacked by 2 kids who think it would be funny to attack a woman and film it to put on the internet. And of course, they didn't know that she's an FBI agent. She's tiny. She's like 5 feet tall. She looked vulnerable, but she kicks some ass. And that video goes viral. The second member of this team puts the video on the internet. He's not being a very good friend there, but anyway, and it goes viral. And unfortunately, the serial killer that she escaped from when she was 16 also sees that video and decides to come after her. She is such an interesting character. I think that's the primary reason why I loved this book, because some of the like chasing a serial killer aspects was a little bit much for me. There was a lot about the FBI and the behavioral science unit, which felt very Criminal Minds. All of that was fine, but what made this book really good was the character of Nina Guerrera. She had a really, really difficult childhood. She was in the system for her entire childhood, and then when she was 16, she gets kidnapped by a serial killer, and it was terrible. And she managed to escape, and then she got emancipated and changed her name. And so what was great about her is her resilience and her courage, and that she made something out of her life from really difficult circumstances. So that part of the book was really great. The serial killer in here is, oh, he's terrible. So I don't really know how to recommend this, because you might not like the serial killer aspect of the book, but the character of Nina is so compelling that might be enough to draw you in. You can tell that the author was a member of the FBI for a while. That comes out really clearly in the way that she writes. She knows what she's talking about. And even that part was interesting. So Nina gets seconded to the behavioral sciences unit for this case, and so she's meeting this team, and she's not used to trusting or working with people, and so this team was great, and kind of some of the inner workings of how they would investigate. It was just really good, but honestly, the character of Nina is what made this story for me. The first sentence of the Cipher. Nina Esperanza gazed up at the man who held her fate in his hands. Ooh, that's pretty good too. And then, after that, I needed a little bit of a break from the craziness, and so I went for one of my historical cozy books, and this is the first in a series that is set in England during World War II, and this is called A Bicycle Built for Murder by Kate Kingsbury. So the main character in this is Lady Elizabeth Hartley Compton, and she is also a really interesting character. So we learn right away that her parents were killed in the Blitz, and her father is an earl, and of course because she's a woman, she can't like inherit the title. But she is their only surviving child, and so she now lives in the manor house, and you know, has that level of authority in the village, kind of without, you know, she can't be the earl or whatever, but so she's it in the manor house. In this one, a friend of hers from the village asks for her help. Her daughter Beryl has gone missing. Beryl is 16 years old. And she has gone missing, and Beryl's mom asks Elizabeth to try and find her. And so Elizabeth is trying to see what she can find out about that situation. Meanwhile, she gets a visit from a major from the American Air Base nearby, and discovers that her house has been chosen to house American officers from the Air Base. She's not thrilled about it, but it's part of her duty for the war effort. So it was just a fast little cozy historical mystery that I really enjoyed. And the first sentence of A Bicycle Built for Murder. The small formation of Spitfires swooped low over the eastern coastline. That totally sets it up. You know exactly what time period you're in just from that one sentence. And I am totally going to continue on with the series. And then finally, I read The Jazz Files by Fiona Veitch Smith. This is also the first in a series, and this is also historical mystery set in London in 1920. So it's a great time period. That part was fantastic. So our main character is Poppy Denby, and she arrives in London. She's 22. She's from the north of England, and she arrives in London because her aunt has agreed to give her a job as a companion or something. And but when she arrives, she finds out that her aunt doesn't actually have a job for her. She just wanted her to have the opportunity to come to London and make something of her life. Her aunt, now Aunt Dorothy, she's fantastic. So she is a suffragette who was injured during one of the demonstrations and now is in a wheelchair. And she has a companion called Grace, who was also a suffragette. And suffragettes play a huge role in this story, which was so fascinating. So something happened in 1913, and that's what they end up investigating today. So Poppy ends up getting a job as an assistant to the editor of a newspaper. And she's quite interested in journalism and reporting and all of that, and she figures if she can start from the ground up, maybe she can eventually get a job as a reporter or as an editor. So there's a lot in here about the 20s, which was very entertaining. London in the 20s, very entertaining. Poppy is a great character. She is feisty and wants something more from her life, believes that, women can do more than they have previously been allowed to do. There's a lot about suffragettes and women's rights, which was so fascinating. I really enjoyed it, and I'll totally be continuing on with the series. And the first sentence of The Jazz Files: a scattering of snow lay across the railway yard, transforming the industrial clutter into a picture postcard, a work of art that could be hung for a night but removed when light and sanity returned. Ooh, that's pretty good too. All right, now, just before we finish, in a previous video, I did a book haul. And I got a comment from Donna, and I thought this was a good idea. In that book haul video, I asked for your help to figure out which of those great books I should read first. And Donna suggested that I put the titles in a jar and just kind of do a random choosing. And I thought that was a fun idea. So I had to pull a few of the titles out for various reasons. And so I have 12 titles here, and what I'm going to do is I've written them on these little pieces of paper, and I'm going to put them in my Fantastic Canada mug. And what I'm going to do is every month I'm going to pull a name out, a title out, and that's the book that I'm going to read next. I thought that would be a fun way. Often what happens, I have so many books to read between the books I have and the books from the library, that the books that I buy at the used bookstore at book hauls kind of end up getting shoved back, and sometimes it's years before I read them. So I thought this was a really fun idea. So going in the mug, we have the Royal Box. So I've put the Royal Box in. The Bayeux Tapestry. Payment Deferred. The Benson Murder Case. Dr. Thorne. Can You Forgive Her? Thunder on the Right. Why Shoot a Butler? The Shorter Peeps, Nightmare, The Moonstone, and Scaramouche. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose one now, and it'll be the book that I read in February. I will read it in February, and then I will either choose another one when I'm finished that book or for March. Because some of the books I think I could read really fast, and others would be are going to take me a little bit longer. So I'm mixing them all up. I'll give it a shake, and I'm mixing them all up. And I have chosen the Bayeux Tapestry. So that's awesome. So this is the one, it's a Folio Society, the Bayeux Tapestry and the Norman Invasion. It's nice and short, so I'll get through it quick. There is text to read, and then the back is the plates. So yeah, I'm excited that I can get into that sooner rather than later. Okay, so let me know, have you read any of these books that I talked about in this video? I would love to hear your thoughts on them in the comment section down below. Let's chat. I love talking with you guys in the comments, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.